Hello everyone, I am Marco Vigilante, Cybersecurity Solution Engineer for Microsoft Italy. In this video I want to show you how it is possible to collect security events from SAP systems directly into Microsoft Sentinel, leveraging a solution named Sentinel Solution for SAP applications. We will also leverage the Agentless connector. Let's have a look at a few prerequisites that we need to address before moving on. So if we have a look at the official documentation from Microsoft under the SAP application section, you will find the dedicated section for the Agentless data connector. From here, you will instantly see that you will need an SAP BTP sub-account, and within that sub-account, you must create the service integration suite, which will be able to connect to your SAP systems through a destination defined to reach out to the connectivity service. The connectivity service is the SAP Cloud Connector that safely exposes your SAP systems to the integration suite. If we proceed further in this documentation, you will see that there are two main personas involved in this activity. The security team from one side that needs to access Microsoft Sentinel, and the SAP Basis team that will implement all the configuration needed on the BTP portal, the SAP Integration Suite, the SAP Cloud Connector, and SAP systems that you are hosting in your environment. So when you proceed within the Microsoft official documentation, you will find a section named Deployment Prerequisites. Here you will find all the prerequisites that both the security team and the SAP Basis team needs to implement. Let's focus first on the SAP requirements that you need to implement. As we said, you will need an SAP Integration Suite instance deployed within your SAP BTP sub-account, an instance of SAP Process Integration Runtime, and an instance of Cloud Foundry Runtime. And you will need to assign all the roles that are listed in this section to your SAP BTP sub-account in order to proceed with the configuration within the SAP Integration Suite. The first thing we have to do is to install the Sentinel for SAP solution from the Microsoft Sentinel store. So let's open first security.microsoft.com and authenticate as at least a security administrator. Let's go to the Microsoft Sentinel section, then Content Hub. This is the store where you will be able to find the solution that we need. Search for SAP. And as soon as the search completes, you will find a solution named SAP Application. With this solution, you will be able to execute controls over potential threats that happen on the application layer of the SAP systems. This solution includes also two data connectors, an older one which is agent-based, and one we are going to use now, which is agentless-based. So let's click on Action, then Install. In my environment, it's already installed. When you have installed this solution, which is free, unless you attach any productive systems to it. Let's move to the Microsoft Sentinel for SAP Agentless connector. As you can see, this is a data connector here. And let's start looking at the steps needed in order to set up this solution. The data connector blade shows you a list of prerequisites on top of it. One of these prerequisites is to have at least enter the application developer role or higher when configuring this connector. This is because the step one of this procedure requires you to click on Deploy Required Azure Resources. And clicking on this button, which in my case is grayed out because I've already performed this operation, it will create a data collection rule, a data collection endpoint, and also a Microsoft Enter app registration. And it will assign required permissions for the DCR. You don't have to create manually a DCR or a DC or the Enter app registration, because clicking on this button will create it for you. So once you have completed step 1, it will create this enterprise application registration, and those parameters are available within the step 2. You will be able to retrieve the client ID and the client secret. Now, this is my demo environment, so I have already created those required resources. So now it's not visible anymore. If you need to retrieve these values, you can always go to your entra.microsoft.com portal, search for the app registration named SAP Agentless Push to Sentinel. On the overview section, you will retrieve the client ID, and under certificates and secrets, you will see the secrets created when the application was created. And from here, you can always decide to remove this secret and create a new one. Then from the portal.azure.com, you will be able to check for the data collection rule that has been created. This one is my DCR created for this integration. Take note of the immutable ID, and this is the associated data collection endpoint here. From the data collection endpoint, click on it and take note of the log ingestion endpoint, because we will need this as well later on. From the portal.azure.com, another thing we will need is the log analytics workspace key. So let's move to log analytics workspaces. Select your workspace, go under agents, and take note of the primary key. So if we move forward on the next steps required in this data connector, we will see that from step 3, you can retrieve the workspace key. Just take note of it, because we will use it later on when we will create a secure parameter artifact within the integration suite. Step number 4 gives you the logs ingestion URL and DCR immutable ID that we sooner got directly from the portal.azure.com. So it's easier to retrieve these parameters from this section here. And for now, that's it on the Sentinel side. Let's move on the SAP Integration Suite side. So on the SAP side, you will need to access your SAP BTP portal, then move to your sub account. This is mine, and that's a trial environment. You can go under Service Marketplace and search for Integration Suite. Then click on Create, which is something I've already done in my environment. Do the same for the SAP Process Integration Runtime. And once you have created those services, those appears in the Instances and Subscription section. You will find your Integration Suite, the Process Integration Runtime, and also the Cloud Foundry runtime environment. Before accessing the Integration Suite, you will need to assign your sub-account users the required permissions. So go under Security, Users, and assign role collection. Search for all the required permissions from the documentation. So sub-account administrator, integration provisioner, PI administrator, integration developer, and business expert. And you will be able to access the integration suite. This is a collection of roles that I have assigned to my user. So once you've done this step, just go back in the Instances and Subscription and click on Go to Application to open the integration suite. Another fundamental step that you will need to address before moving on is to bind your Cloud Connector to the SAP BTP Cockpit portal. Once you've done this, you will be able to set up a destination in this section, and this will be the route to your systems when the SAP connector will try to retrieve new events from those system IDs. So let's move into our Cloud Connector instance in your private environment. Log in, and you will need to associate this Cloud Connector to your BTP account, sub-account. In order to do this, you can click on Add Sub-Account, configure using authentication data, and then from the BTP portal, you can click on Download Authentication Data and just import them into this window. Once you've done this, you will be able to find your system exposed by the Cloud Connector. Within the Microsoft official documentation, you will also find some of the parameters required in order to set up the Cloud Connector safely, and those resources will be needed to be added to our Cloud Connector instance. So you will need to move to your sub-account section, Cloud to On-Premise, click the plus button and add your SAP systems. Once you've done this, this is mine in my demo environment, which is running under a Docker container. You will be able to check if the connection is feasible between the Cloud Connector and the SAP instance, and then you will be able to add resources as stated within this section of the documentation. Configure SAP Cloud Connector settings. Once you have been able to set up all the required resources on the Cloud Connector, we can proceed on the BTP portal in setting up the destinations. So once you have completed this step of letting the Cloud Connector to be seen by the SAP BTP portal, we can proceed on setting up destinations towards our private systems. So click on Create, and I have already created mine. So give it a proper name and take note of it. Select the type RFC and select a user which has all the privileges needed to access security events data on your private environment. I am using an overprivileged user because this is a test environment, so please use yours accordingly and implement, please, the least privilege principle. Then you have to specify your target system specifications, such as the virtual application server host, a system number, and the client, which are specific for your environment. Then click Save. Once you have clicked the Save button, you can also click on Check Connection, and please be sure that your backend is reachable from the Cloud Connector. Okay, so now it is time to set up the integration suite. We first go under the Discover section, then Integration, and search for Sentinel. And you will find this package, which includes two artifacts type integration flow. The first one, prerequisites checker, is the first one to be executed, and it's aimed at find any misconfiguration within your SAP environment. And the second one is to be executed, it's the data collector itself. But first, we need to import this package within our integration suite environment. So click on copy. And once you've done this, okay, because this message says that, of course, in my environment, this package already exists. Let's move under the design section, integrations and API, and we will find the imported package in this section here. Then we can move under artifacts section, and we will start configuring both the artifact. Before proceeding, another step that we need to address is the creation of two variables called security material. The first one is the workspace key, because it will be needed in order to write events into our log analytic workspace, so in Sentinel, and the log ingestion API, which are the credentials required to access the enterprise application, and so to allow the communication between our Sentinel environment and the SAP integration suite. As you can see here, I am using a token service URL, which is made of login.microsoftonline.com, then my tenant ID, and OAuth, v2, and then token. Then I have here the client ID, the client secret from my enterprise application registration, and other parameters that are available within the step number 2 of our data connector. And then we can click on deploy. Same thing for the workspace key. Insert it and then click on deploy. Once we have done those two steps, let's try to execute our prerequisite checker iFlow. Click on configure. Then use under the credential name the exact same name that we have given to our variable under security material, and the exact name of the RFC destination name under the BTP portal. So it must be exactly the same. And as well, the same name of the workspace key parameter under security parameter. Then click on save and then deploy. Once we have done this, under the documentation, you will find this PowerShell script that allows to execute the prerequisite checker iFlow and then test if there are any misconfiguration within your SAP environment. So copy this and let's use PowerShell IC. Customize the CPI endpoint, the credentials URL, service key, and service secret based on your actual environment. Then run it. And let's check if, okay, all prerequisites check passed successfully. Then we can see the result of this execution from the message status overview, and then filter for prerequisite checker. We see it has been completed successfully. So now that we have successfully executed the prerequisite checker, we can proceed on setting up the data collector integration flow the same way we did for the prerequisite checker. Let's go under configure, then more. Let's use the same security parameter that we used before, so the credential name and the workspace key parameter name, which are our variable that hosts those parameters. Then use the DCR immutable ID and the log ingestion URL, retrieving these parameters directly from the Sentinel connector. And we can find the log ingestion URL and DCR immutable ID, as I said, from the step 4 under the Agentless connector section in our Sentinel environment. One of the last steps is to add our SAP client. So click on Add SAP Client and insert the RFC destination name. We can retrieve it from destinations under the BTP portal. Then we will need the Agentless client ID, secret, authorization server URL, and integration suite endpoint. So let's go under the BTP portal, instance and subscription, and now it is time to use the process integration runtimes information. Here we have created a service key with this process. I gave it a name and clicked on create. And in my case, Lab Process Integration Suite service key is the one I need now. If I click on it, I am able to retrieve the client ID. Let's take it and copy under the SAP Agentless client ID. Let's take also the client secret, then the authorization server URL, and the URL. Then click on connect and let's wait for the first event to come. Once the connection has been established successfully, you will find your SAP system under SAP connection in this section here. I can see my connection in this section. And if you need to do some sort of troubleshooting, you can always go and ask to the SAP Basis team to go under Monitor, Message, Status Overview, and then check for the artifact data collector. Here they will be able to see if any errors on permissions or other kind of error happens. After a couple of minutes, you will be able to search for your events directly into Sentinel. And this screen down here will show you how many events are coming from the SAP systems.